Thomas, who's a professor at IMT Atlantique. He likes to tell the story about how he was doing his PhD in algebraic topology. He wrote his thesis with TeX. He said, what am I doing? I'm going to be a computer scientist now.
Okay, this is a big honor for me to give this talk in front of Don about TeX in just 30 minutes, because TeX literally changed my life. So the key word of this talk is gratitude. Okay, the word doesn't appear explicitly in the talk, but it's it. And here you can see a drawing by Duane Bibi, the famous designer of TeX illustrations. It's about this occasion, and I made a t-shirt for Don and another one for Jill with this drawing. And you can see TeX together with the lioness of Metafont walking on a path which is paved by bits, and a landmark, happy 80th birthday, and the path starts from a temple with the initials of Don, Dek. Okay, so now, why did I choose talking about paths? Well, a path is, of course, a tramway, a track specially constructed for a particular use, which is also the case of TeX, but also a way of life, a way of conduct, a way of thought. There's this famous poem by Kavafis, «Αυγή στο πηγεμό για την Ιθάκη να έρχεσαι να είναι μακρύς ο δρόμος, γεμάτος περιπέτειες, γεμάτος γνώσεις». What is Ithaca? Ithaca is a dream, a project. Ithaca is it, and Don had many Ithacas in his life, and he attained them all. And what is important is not attaining a destination, it's the voyage. The voyage full of adventure, full of discoveries. So now is the moment where I have to give the outline of my talk. And this was difficult, because the first idea I had about TeX is to have this outline. It's the Grand Canyon, because somebody said talking about TeX is like trying to describe the Grand Canyon in a postcard. So you may ask why the Grand Canyon, because when you look at TeX, sometimes you feel like this, contemplating beauty, and sometimes you feel like that. It is also the Grand Canyon, it is also TeX. So my real outline is this one. And here you see all the sections of my talk, and the edges are semantic similarity, semantic relatedness when it's above a given threshold, and of course I have to find a path in this graph, a shortest Hamiltonian, for the measure of semantic relatedness. What I did actually was to find communities of vertices, and I drew this path manually. So I would start with this part, which is rather about history and about models. So first of all, TeX is a path in time. You may say it starts in 1942 with this 4-year-old boy, which goes to a library and is already in the local newspaper because he likes to read Baba the King. And the first landmark, of course, the first book, typeset in TeX, Lena Bernis, 1978, The Grandmother of Jill, and of course then the TeX book, 1984, and 1990, Don's decision to freeze TeX. And all of this, of course, leads us to today. This was supposed to be the logo of this conference, and I don't know what happened. played this also a part in the history of typography. So we all know that Gutenberg modelized writing, invented typography by using movable metal type. So this is a model of writing. And Dawn's model uses boxes and glue. Many people in the Renaissance modelized letter shapes. Pacioli is one of them. And then, of course, Dawn used Metafont. Martin Ruckert has extensively talked about the letter S and the difficulties Dawn faced. What Martin didn't give is this quotation by Jill, because after 3 days of loss of sleep, Dawn asked Jill, what should I do? And she said, why don't you make it look like an S? But we all know about Gutenberg and Pacioli and Dawn, but that's not all. In fact, Techen Metafont has introduced 2 new models, a model of writing and a model of documents. Now, to explain, I will have to do a small parenthesis. In 1968, in their foundational work, The Sound Pattern of English, Chomsky and Haley described the phonological structure of a language, English or any other language, through what they call sound rules. So this is actually a production rule in a context-sensitive grammar. You can see the context. And if you combine these production rules, you get a derivation. So what Chomsky and Haley do is they define what they call abstract sounds. And for example, when you have morphemes which are combined, like here, du in French with the S of the plural, du can be either depth or du. And the sound rule will make the S disappear. S will be mute. Now, Richard Strout, inspired by Anneke Moon, has extended this to graphemes. Graphemes are like phonemes. You find them using minimal pairs. And the discipline studying graphemes is graphemics. So the diagram given by Strout is you still start with abstract sounds, but then you have a standard conversion which depends on the language between phonemes and graphemes, which gives you what he calls an abstract spelling. And then you have spelling rules which are autonomous with respect to phonology, giving you the actual spelling. And here the example I'm giving is from French again, du, which can be either noun, depth, or an adjective, du. If you take the abstract sounds du plus the S of the plural, you should get du, D-U-S. But then, for disambiguation reasons, in French spelling, you will get a circumflex accent, which doesn't affect pronunciation at all. It's only for disambiguation. And this example is even more interesting because you have a double disambiguation. Without the S, you should disambiguate du between the article, which is the contraction of de le, and the word depth or du. When you put an S, there is no ambiguity with the article never takes an S, but still there is ambiguity between the adjective, du, and the noun depth. And so the circumflex accent is introduced for that second ambiguity. Okay? Now, what is spelling for Richard Strout? He defines a planar language as a formal language with not just one concatenation operator, but 5 of them, which correspond to the different placements, relative placements of characters. So over, under, on the left, on the right, and surrounding. And since you don't have associativity, you also need brackets. And here's an example. If we want to modelize Chinese characters as a regular language over components, whatever these components may be, they may be radicals or something else, here is how you can write that character as a word in this formal language. Now, graphemes, this is the linguistic vocabulary. Are they not character tokens? Are they not Unicode characters? And all of these concatenation operators, can they not be represented by text control sequences? So what I'm saying is that text extends the diagram of Richard Strode, going from this abstract, not completely abstract, semi-abstract spelling to real typography. So TeX is a new model of writing where we go from character codes and operators to DVI for the positioning and metaphon for the glyphs, for the images. And this can be used for any language. And we're not finished. There is also a model of documents. So just some terminology. What is a character? It's an abstract part of a writing system. And a glyph is an image of a character. You can also consider a character as an equivalence class of glyphs. In document formats you know and you use, you have sometimes characters, sometimes glyphs, some simplistic matching between them, but it's only simplistic. TeX has introduced a new model of document. And here, we don't only look at the result, we look at the process for obtaining glyphs and glyph positions from characters and commands. So a text document is not just the source and the result, it's the whole process of doing it. And the process contains the complete information. You know when everything is applied and for what reason. So here's an example. If you take the FI ligature and the OE ligature of French, they are both ligatures. In the DVI file, you find ligatures. But their status is not the same because the OE ligature is already present in the source code, while the FI ligature arrives at a later step when the typesetting process meets the font and gets information about availability of this ligature in the font, and of course knowing that it's not a German word where the ligature has to be broken. So having the whole process from source to output gives you the 5 W's. Who, when, why, what, and how. We can take allegories about that. You want to talk about a man's life, a woman's life. It's not just what this man left, it's the whole life. Life is a transformation of projects into memories. Take this conference. 6 months ago, it was a project, a dream. Today, now it's an event. In 6 months, it will be memory. You don't want to keep only memories. You want the whole process. So, taking metaphor source is your project. DVI plus PK is your memory. What's important is how you obtain it. Same thing in music. You have a score, you have a recording. The important part is not the source or the result, it's the process of obtaining. is the process of doing music. And Don knows that very well. Switching to a slightly different topic about aesthetics, there's always been a need of skills for doing typography. Canons have appeared but never really formalized. Don is formalizing the canon of typographical aesthetics. By all these nice notions he introduced, and by using, again, a path. This time it's inside tech. It's a shortest path for the measure of badness, of demerits, in the line-breaking process. So tech works because you have a DAG, directed acyclic graph, and finding the shortest path is of linear complexity. Let's move to another facet, disseminating scientific knowledge. Some figures. There are currently 1,230,000 papers on archive done in tech. You need help. There are 147,000 answered questions, and sometimes with many different answers on Stack Exchange. You need extra power. We have more than 5,000 packages on CTAG written by more than 2,000 people. There are many collaborative online platforms. One of them, Overleaf, has 2 million accounts. So if you were wondering how many people use tech, we have already 2 million accounts and 70 million documents. And 100% of presentations of this conference went to Architect. Actually, that's fake news. But the rest is true, all of it. And anyone having access to a computer can produce documents with the same high quality. Now, let's talk about the impact of tech on humans. When you use tech, you become humble, patient, hardened. You're experiencing something which here is taken from the definition of tragedy by Aristotle. You're experiencing through pity and fear the proper purgation, computer, pathomaton, catharsis. But the result is worth the pain. That's the whole deal. And there's beauty emerging. And the most important part is that you can always obtain the result you want, because you have total control on your tools. And this enhances the quality of life. This gives you confidence, self-esteem, and dignity, and not frustration like other programs which have limits. Besides personal development, you have personal enhancement. So this is a warning given by Don in the Metafont book. If you read this book, you will change, you will evolve, you get hooked. And indeed, being exposed to tech extensively alters your senses. It's like drugs, but in a good way. And it produces extra sensitivity to form, of course, but this sensitivity to form enhances understanding of context, because it's through form that we get to context. And meanwhile, takers have some symptoms, which some of you may recognize. Facial spasms, nightmares with overfull boxes, a smile when seeing these typical errors, euphoria when seeing a beautiful form, visionary ecstasy in front of Renaissance books, factor excitation or the smell of paper. And of course, when you see computer model fonts used in some book, this feeling of home, sweet home. There are people who use text to make a living. And there again, it's the ideal tool because it gives you total control. You don't have to learn it anew on every new version. There is no new version. But you can capitalize your knowledge. And this is very important when you're doing it for a living. And then you have communities of people. People share experiences, pleasure. Here you have a small map of user group. And these communities have no barriers. And there are many technically used friendships. And this is certainly not negligible. Text may lead you to strange creatures, like this one, or this one, or this one. These creatures live in tribes. And their tribes sometimes meet. And when these tribes meet, then the characters become messengers of peace, of hope. Text is also ideal for obfuscation. This is one of the songs Eric was talking about, with very small complexity. And here is how you can write it. This is very good obfuscation because we have a primitive which operates in a transfigurative way. It changes the behavior of any character. So this is really ideal for obfuscators. And finally, about Dawn. First of all, about the documentation. CNT, Computers and Typesetting, a 5-volume work, is a closed unit. Books have logical structure. Books are produced by programs which have a different logical structure, since this is literally programming. Programs are described by text, which has paragraphs, lines, words, characters. Characters are described by programs, which again are described by text. Are you seeing the complexity? And even the tiniest character needs the full power. To obtain a comma, you need metaphor and text. You need the description. And every character is necessary. So it's like an Oriental theory of the universe. Every atom reflects the whole universe. Every comma reflects the whole of space and matter. Now, in this universe, you can delve, and in its center, you will find its creator. Then, of course, we have Dawn's proverbial humor, irreverent, unrestrainable, and ubiquitous. These two sentences are from the textbook, which is Computer Typesetting 8. So at the beginning of the book, Dawn will say, another noteworthy characteristic of this book, in this case, talk in my case, it doesn't always tell the truth. And then the final exercise is find all the lies. And all of the jokes. And of course, textbook is full of very nice quotations. This is one of my favorite. An STA marketing manager received a nightly phone call from a disturbed customer. His 301 was a computer that would fill a room. Hyphenated God. When we read Don's books, we learn things. But we also learn how to learn. And by learning how to learn, you learn how to teach. How to make the dullest subject interesting and noteworthy. And isn't this creativity? So Don cares about every single of you, whether you are an expert or a novice. And this is a permanent source of inspiration. This quote is not from Don, but it's in the textbook again, and it's, for me, the essence of teaching. So I can explain a subject for a friend on a long walk in the woods. A walk, a path. So now I'm at the end of this talk. Ithaca gave you the marvelous Johnny on stage, Johnny in life, and without her, without Ithaca, you would not have set out. So, thank you very much, Don. Gratis for all your stunden. Somebody had to say happy birthday in Swedish. So happy birthday, Don, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts.